When we hear the word system, our minds often conjure images of something mechanical, cold, and complex. We think of assembly lines, computer code, or vast industrial networks. We imagine something external to us, a machine we interact with, but are not a part of. But this is a limited view. The most powerful systems, the ones that truly govern our lives, are much simpler, much more intimate. A behavioral system is the invisible architecture of our actions. It's the structure surrounding a single behavior, the space it happens in, the subtle friction it encounters, the immediate rewards it receives, and the silent patterns that repeat in its wake. Every single behavior, from the most trivial to the most life-altering, operates inside one of these systems, whether we are conscious of it or not. Let's begin with the most tangible element, the environment. No behavior happens in a vacuum. It happens somewhere, grounded in a physical or digital context. It unfolds in a room, on a phone, within the quiet rhythm of a morning routine, or inside the rigid blocks of a schedule. This context is not a passive backdrop. It is an active participant in our choices. Consider the phone on your desk. If it's within arm's reach, a constant, silent invitation, you will almost certainly check it more often. The impulse isn't a failure of your willpower. It's a response to a frictionless opportunity. If your desk is a landscape of clutter, your attention will not be a focused beam, but a scattered light, pulled in a dozen directions by unfinished tasks and visual noise. If the television is a constant presence in your home, always on, the hum of it becomes the baseline, and the richness of silence can start to feel uncomfortable, even alien. We often mistake these reactions for fixed personality traits. I'm just easily distracted, or I can't stand quiet. But more often than not, they are simply adaptations to our environmental conditions. The environment doesn't force our hand, but it does design the path of least resistance. It makes certain behaviors easier, more intuitive, and more likely than others. And in the quiet calculus of daily life, what is easy tends to repeat. This leads us to the invisible currents that guide our decisions, the twin forces of incentives and friction. Every system, by its very design, quietly rewards one behavior while making another more difficult. The modern world is a masterclass in this principle. If scrolling through a social media feed brings an immediate, effortless hit of stimulation, a new image, a new message, a new piece of information, that behavior is instantly and powerfully rewarded. The system is designed for it. Conversely, if the simple act of exercising requires significant preparation, finding your workout clothes, packing a bag, traveling to a gym, and then facing physical discomfort, carries a heavy load of friction. Most people assume that discipline is the deciding factor in this equation. That strong-willed individuals simply overcome the friction. But the reality is that friction and incentive shape our behavior long before discipline ever has a chance to enter the picture. The structure of the system does most of the work. What is rewarded, what feels easy and gratifying, continues. What is inconvenient, what requires effort and planning, gradually fades from our lives. This isn't a sign of personal weakness. It is the simple, unyielding force of structural gravity, pulling us toward the path of least resistance. After a behavior happens, something always follows. It might be a tangible result, a subtle emotional shift, or a reaction from someone else. This consequence, big or small, feeds back into the system, creating a loop that teaches us what to do next. This is the feedback mechanism, and it is the primary teacher of our subconscious mind. Consider procrastination. When you put off a difficult task, the immediate feedback is often positive, a wave of relief, a temporary removal of stress. That feeling of relief powerfully reinforces the act of procrastinating, making you more likely to do it again the next time you face a similar challenge, even though the long-term consequence is increased stress. Or think about speaking up in a meeting. If your contribution is met with conflict or dismissal, the feedback is negative. The system teaches you that silence is safer, that speaking your mind leads to discomfort. Over time, our behavior adapts not to our conscious intentions or our long-term goals, but to the immediate feedback we receive. The system quietly and repeatedly teaches our behavior what to do next, shaping our habits from the inside out. So, if these systems are so powerful, why do they feel so invisible? The reason they are so hard to notice is precisely because they feel normal. They don't feel like an external structure. They feel like us. The cluttered desk doesn't feel like a system. It feels like your personality. The habit of checking your phone doesn't feel like an environmental cue. It feels like your own restlessness. These patterns are the water we swim in, and a fish, as the saying goes, is the last to discover water. But the proof of the system's existence becomes undeniable when you change it. When you step into a new environment, your behavior often changes with it, sometimes dramatically. When you intentionally shift your daily routines, your old patterns begin to dissolve, and new ones emerge. When the incentives in your life change, your choices naturally change as well. This isn't because you suddenly became a different person overnight. It's because the structure you were operating within did. If our behavior is a follower of structure, then it is the structure that deserves our attention. Not blame for our perceived failures. Not a sense of urgency to force change through sheer willpower. Not the application of brute force against our own habits. Just clarity. The first step is to simply see the system for what it is, to observe the environment, to identify the friction and incentives, and to understand the feedback loops that are currently running your life. By seeing the structure, you can begin to redesign it. You can consciously create an environment that makes good habits easier and bad habits harder. You can build a life where the path of least resistance leads you toward your goals, not away from them. This is where true sustainable change is born, not in fighting against ourselves, but in building a better system to live within.